Hi, Gigi. Come share an apple with me. I picked it fresh from Granny Smith's sinister tree. Don't mind my stories, you'll soon see. They're as dark and disturbing as they can be. Murmurs of secrets, bloody sodden crimes, Granny's bone-clicking tales will twist your mind. You'll be hanging on my words from the edge of your seats. Now, how'd you like to go dig up some bodies with me? So go grab a shovel and gather around, 'cause 8 feet under is where they'll be found. This podcast contains detailed discussions of real-life crimes, which may include descriptions of violence, sensitive subject matter, and other potentially distressing content. Listener discretion is strongly advised. The material is intended for mature audiences only and may not be suitable for children or those who may find such topics triggering. Welcome back to 8 Feet Under with Granny Smith. How's everybody doing? Sorry off top if you can hear that fan in the background. Hopefully not, but it's already hot as Satan's fucking oven outside, and I don't understand why. It's been hot for like a month, and that's absolutely ridiculous. We completely skipped over spring and just went straight to the fiery pits of hell. And speaking of that, I got a little PSA, okay? As the weather warms up, you know what that means? Let me explain it to you. Put your phone down and just listen for a second, okay? Stop scrolling, all right? I said put the goddamn phone down and listen to me. Please, please, please wash your ass properly. After you get out of the shower, put on like 8 swipes of deodorant and some clean clothes, because it is too fucking hot out there already and it's just gonna get worse. Which means some of y'all are out there smelling like swamp ass and a dead body at a week-old crime scene, okay? Your scent is triggering a full-blown investigation. Did you shower? Did you use something to scrub? Did you hear what I said? Did you use something to scrub in the shower? I don't give a fuck if it's a washcloth, a loofah, an exfoliator. Just please, for the love of all things holy, use something to scrub your entire body in the shower. Okay? Now, blink twice if you understand me. How many of y'all actually just blinked? And I ask that because my dumbass blinked involuntarily as I was saying it. But I'm glad we're on the same page. The Smell Good community thanks you. Anyway, on a brighter note, I took my Gigi and my daughter to Foodie Land and the zoo over the weekend. Look at me with all the outdoor activities, okay? It was warm though. Saturday wasn't as bad when we went to Foodie Land. So we went, I think, around like 5 o'clock. The sun was starting to go down, so it wasn't as bad. But Sunday, I fucked up. We went around like 2 o'clock. And actually, when we woke up, I told my daughter, I was like, it's going to be too hot. I don't really want to go anymore. We can go like next weekend in the morning. She was like, no, I really want to take the baby to the zoo. Can we please just go? So I gave in and we went, and we lasted like less than 2 hours because it was too hot. My daughter was the first one like, Mom, can we please leave? And the baby fell asleep anyway. So we left because it was just too hot and not a lick of fucking wind in sight, which makes it even worse. So we went home, and guess what we did when we went home? Took a fucking shower. I showered. My daughter showered. My Gigi got a bath. No exceptions, okay? I refuse to smell like zoo animals and swamp ass. So please, again, wash your ass. Wash that ass, ho, and scrub your feet. Wash that ass, ho. Wash that ass for me. Or whatever Sexy Red said on that song. Okay, I'm done. Sorry. Something's wrong with me. Anyways, I have some show recommendations on Netflix. I believe it's Netflix. Yeah, it's Netflix. There's a show called His and Hers. I think it's like 5 or 6 episodes. Please watch it. Please promise me you will watch the entire thing. By like the second to last episode, you're going to think you got it all figured out, and you don't. Okay? Even me as a top secret government FBI profiler agent didn't see shit coming. So just watch all of it. The other show is called, I think it's on Apple TV. It's called Imperfect Woman. I was getting my hair done the other day at my friend's house, and while we were doing my hair, we were watching Imperfect Woman, and we thought it had all the episodes dropped, but I guess it doesn't. I think there was only 2 or 3, and of course it leaves you on this freaking cliffhanger. And yeah, it was really good. And I also don't have Apple TV, so if somebody has Apple TV and I can use your login, slide it in my DMs, please and thank you. But anyways, yeah, those 2 shows are so good. So enough of that chit chat. You guys get so fucking sidetracked, it's ridiculous. Anyway, let's get on with why we came here, right? So today's story was not a suggestion, but it was already on my list. So today we're going to head on over to the wealthy suburbs of Indianapolis behind a picture-perfect family home where the woods held secrets so massive that investigators would later describe it as something close to a mass disaster scene. And for years, while men vanished from the same blocks of gay nightlife in Indianapolis, mainstream attention barely flickered. Then decades later, a new coroner reopened the files because the names mattered, because the missing deserved to be found, and because the dead deserved to go home. So go grab those bedazzled ass shovels so we can dig 8 feet into the life and the suspicions and the long shadow of Herbert Richard Baumeister, a man who on paper looked like a businessman and the perfect family man, but in the dark may have been one of Indiana's most prolific killers. Welcome to the Fox Hollow Murders. Now, there is a series on Netflix. Nope, that's a lie. There's a series on Hulu called The Fox Hollow Murders, and that's really good. I suggest watching that as well. All the other sources will be listed in the show notes. So, who in the Sam Hell was Herb Baumeister? I'm going to tell you. Herbert Richard Baumeister was born in Indianapolis, Indiana on April 7th, 1947. He was the oldest of 4 children, born to Dr. Herbert Eugene Baumeister, an anesthesiologist who died in November 1986, and Elizabeth Baumeister, who died on April 7th, 2013. Now, by many accounts, his early childhood appeared quote-unquote normal, but as his adolescence hit, people who knew him later described him as increasingly disturbing and having antisocial behavior. He apparently did things that made adults around him very uneasy. His friends later recalled his urophilia and that he used to, quote, ponder what it would be like to taste human urine, end quote. They also recalled that he liked to urinate on teachers' desks and play with dead animals. So, red flag, red flag, red flag. And in case anybody's wondering, the exact definition for urophilia, also known as urolagnia, pretty sure I fucked that up. It's a paraphilia classified as an other specified paraphilic disorder in the DSM-5 involving sexual arousal from the sight, smell, or consumption of urine, often called quote-unquote water sports or quote-unquote golden showers. R. Kelly. It involves urinating on a partner or being urinated on for pleasure, power dynamics, or taboo-related excitement. You're fucking welcome. Now, his behavior in his teens did worry his father enough that Baumeister was sent for mental evaluations. He was reportedly diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and antisocial personality disorder, but he did not receive any further psychiatric treatment. Now, his education came in waves, stops and starts. In 1965, he went to Indiana University for a semester, then he dropped out. 1967, he returned to Indiana University, and then 1972, he attended a semester at Butler University. Now, as an adult, he cycled through jobs, often described as hardworking, but increasingly strange in his behavior. Now, we fast forward to November of 1971, Baumeister married a woman by the name of Juliana Sater, also known as Julie, and had 3 kids with her. Now, Julie later stated that in over 25 years of marriage, they had been sexually intimate only 6 times, and she had never saw her husband fully nude. Again, red flag, red flag, red flag. So 6 months after the wedding, Baumeister was committed to a psychiatric hospital by his father for about 2 months, and Julie later described him as, quote, hurting and needing help, end quote. By 1988, Baumeister founded the Save-A-Lot thrift store chain and it became successful. And that's kind of what's terrifying about cases like this. From the outside, you look at him or people like him and you see this stable man, married with kids, has his own business, seems trustworthy. But then there's this whole other dark side to them. And in the shadows of Indiana's highways, another timeline was unfolding. So before the Fox Hollow Farm became a name that people whispered, there was another pattern. Bodies found near Interstate 7 across Indiana and Ohio from June 1980 to October of 1991. Now, the killer, still officially unidentified, became known as the I-70 Strangler. Now, investigators believe that the killer met the victims around gay bars and similar establishments in Indianapolis. The victims were found naked or partially clothed in rural areas near I-70, often dumped in waterways or ditches, and they were strangled. Now, Baumeister was officially named a prime suspect in April of 1999, and investigators noted that the bodies connected to the I-70 Strangler stopped being found after Baumeister purchased the Fox Hollow Farm, which investigators believe became a burial site for later victims. Now I'm going to walk through the named victims of the I-70 Strangler. June 7th, 1980, Michael Sean Petrie was 15 when he was reported missing. He was seen 3 days later riding in a stranger's car in Indianapolis. Then on June 16th, 1980, he was found naked in Hamilton County, Indiana, and the cause of death was strangulation. There were no drugs or alcohol in his blood. July 21st, 1982, Maurice Allen Taylor, who was 22, was found topless in Weasel Creek in Hamilton County. The cause of death was not fully established, but suspected strangulation. On October 3rd, 1982, Delvoyd Lee Baker was 14, found semi-nude near a river in Hamilton County. Witnesses said that he was last seen on October 2nd in downtown Indianapolis, getting into a blue van driven by a young white man with a bushy mustache. Baker called home around 10:30 p.m. saying he'd be late because he wanted to go to the movies. Later, it was established that he'd been cruising Indianapolis gay bars for 3 months and had been a victim of sexual abuse. Poor baby. On May 28th, 1983, Michael Andrew Riley, known as Mick, was 22, disappeared after visiting the Vogue Theater nightclub in Indianapolis. He was last seen leaving with an unidentified man, and his body was found on June 5th in a ditch in Hancock County, just southeast of Greenfield. Autopsy showed he was strangled, likely using a towel. In February of 1998, a resident contacted police claiming that Baumeister was the man last seen with Riley. May 7th, 1985, Eric Allen Roediger was 17 when he vanished. He was later found shirtless near a stream east of Lewisburg. Witnesses claimed that he accepted a ride from a passing car at a bus stop early in the morning and was found with an apparent burn mark on his left shoulder, and he was strangled with a rope. August 15th, 1986, Michael Allen Glenn, known as Mike, was 29, was found in a ditch near Eaton, Ohio, wearing only underwear, had strangulation marks, possibly a rope. He was actually identified 3 years later via fingerprinting. On October 15th through the 17th of 1987, James Boyd Robbins Jr., who was 21, went missing on October 15th around 10 p.m. shortly after leaving his mother's home in Indianapolis. He was found on October 17th, naked in a ditch near rural Shelby County. On August 12th of 1989, Stephen Lynn Elliott, who was 26, was found in Preble County, I feel like I'm saying that wrong, Preble County, Ohio, wearing only underwear. He was strangled, presumably with a rope. His father told police that he came out as gay in 1979 and that he later became involved in prostitution and struggled with alcohol addiction. On August 14th of 1990, Clay Russell Boatman, who was a 32-year-old licensed practical nurse, disappeared after leaving his Richmond, Indiana apartment to visit Our Place, which was a gay bar. He was found in a ditch near Eaton, Ohio, with signs of strangulation. His family denied he was homosexual. On September 6th of 1990, Thomas Ray Clevenger Jr., who was 18, vanished. He was later found semi-nude near an abandoned railroad track near Greenville, Ohio. He engaged in prostitution near gay bars to earn money, but that was denied by his family. On August 6, 1991, Otto Gary Becker, who was 42, was found in a ditch next to a gravel road in rural Henry County, Indiana. Witnesses claimed that they saw Becker in a car with another male driving north on Interstate 465 near Indianapolis. Witnesses were shown photos of known criminals, but nothing came of it. So this is a long stretch of years of this happening to these men. And then after that, the timeline shifts into the woods. So in May of 1988, Baumeister purchased the Fox Hollow Farm, which is an 18-acre property off of 156th Street and the Monon Trail in Westfield, Indiana. Now, this is where the story becomes more than one man's double life, because this story becomes about a community who saw the smoke first and struggled to get anyone to look for the fire. There is a quote that captures the moment from a later conversation at a bar in Massachusetts. Hunter Vail, who was an activist for the Indianapolis LGBTQ community, states, quote, "The hawks are circling." End quote. Vail described how a renewed push to identify the remains later drew a wave of true crime attention. He states, quote, "A lot of it doesn't feel good. A lot of it feels like they're ready to make Herb Baumeister into the next Jeffrey Dahmer or John Wayne Gacy, into a household name." End quote. Another voice from that era, Lawrence Shepard, describes how it felt in real time. He states, quote, "It started as a murmur that this was happening. Guys were just gone." End quote. Then a publisher by the name of Ted Fleischkaker said, quote, "At first, nobody was looking and nobody was paying attention." end quote. Because you have to think also in that time, there was no texting, no cell phones, no social media. So someone missing for weeks could easily be explained away. People moved, people drifted, and it was also the height of the AIDS epidemic. So Ted put it pretty bluntly. He says, quote, "It never made the TV news, ever. By the time you got to the point where you'd say, I haven't seen him since 2 weeks ago at the Metro, they were already dead," end quote. And those words hit hard because they show the time lag between the disappearance of these men and when the alarm bells start to go off. So now I'm going to walk through the missing men tied directly to the Fox Hollow Farm, or men that were associated with the Fox Hollow Farm. We have John Lee Bayer, known as Johnny, 20 years old, went missing May 28th, 1993. Jeffrey Allen Jones, known as Jeff, 31, missing July 6, 1993. Richard Douglas Hamilton Jr., 20 years old, missing July 30th, 1993. Alan Lee Livingston, 27, missing August 6, 1993. He actually wasn't identified until October of 2023. We have Manuel Resendez, 34, last seen at a downtown Indianapolis gay bar on August 6 of 1993. He wasn't identified until January of 2024. Daniel Thomas Halloran, he was 21 or 22, went missing sometime after March of 1994, wasn't identified until 2025 by forensic genetic genealogy. Stephen Sperlin Hale was 28, went missing April 1st, 1994. Alan Wayne Broussard, 28, went missing June 6, 1994. Roger Allen Goodlett, 33, went missing July 22nd, 1994. Michael Frederick Kieran, also known as Mike, 45, was last seen on March 31st, 1995. Jerry Williams Comer, who was 34, was last seen on August 8th, 1995. His vehicle was later found at the Castleton Square Mall. So, woven throughout this timeline are the places where these men were last seen, which were downtown gay bars and clubs, including the 501 Tavern, Varsity Lounge, and the Metro. This is where patterns were noticed, where fear spread quietly, and where a name began to surface. A name that wasn't real. Now, before we get into that name, I forgot to mention a little incident in 1994. Baumeister's 13-year-old son Eric was playing in the wooded backyard and found a complete, partially buried human skeleton. So Baumeister told his family it was one of his father's dissecting skeletons, something that he'd stored in their garage, and then he reburied it in their garden. Years later, his wife Julie says that she just believed him and took him for his word. All right, so back to this name that surfaced. In 1994, investigators were contacted by a man named Tony Harris, and he says a gay bar patron who called himself Brian Smart tried to kill him during an erotic asphyxiation encounter, attempting to strangle him from behind with a pool hose inside a mansion after meeting him at the 501 Club. Tony also tells investigators that while he was there, this Brian Smart did make other attempts to strangle him using a tie and a belt. Now later, Tony did see Brian again in August of 1995, and he followed him and then got his license plate number. Another man named Mark Goodyear contacted the IPD missing persons detective Mary Wilson and told her about Brian Smart as well. Now, Detective Wilson wrote in a letter later stating, quote, "He told me that his experience with the man scared him and that he could have easily been killed during the incident. He thought that possibly the other missing men could have had a similar experience," end quote. Now, Wilson couldn't identify Brian Smart from the initial account, but this warning did shift things because it made the rumors feel more like a pattern instead of paranoia. Detective Wilson wound up staying on this case long after others moved on. So police did trace that license plate number that Tony Harris gave them, and it linked them to none other than Herb Baumeister. And in November of 1995, police went to the Fox Hollow Farm and asked them if they could search the property, but Herb and Julie refused. However, by June of 1996, Julie's fear had grown, and after filing for divorce, she gave the police consent to search the property while Herb was away. On June 24th, 1996, investigators recovered human bone fragments belonging to at least 11 people buried in the woods at Fox Hollow Farm. About 10,000 bones and bone fragments were ultimately associated with this site. And as if things weren't already bad enough, inside the home of Herb Baumeister, down in the basement area, there was an indoor pool and a wet bar. Now that seems pretty normal on the surface, right? Wrong. It's what he did with the space that turned it into something else entirely. He had mannequins down there. Now, when I say mannequins, I'm not talking about just one or two. He had multiple mannequins, fully dressed and positioned around the pool. Each one was carefully placed and arranged. It was almost like he was trying to set a scene. People who saw it said it looked like a party, like a pool party that had just stopped, like the guests were just frozen in time. These fully clothed figures standing around posed as if they belonged there. But there was no music, no voices, no movement, just silence and mannequins. Now, mind you, this is the same area where he would bring his victims. Ugh, could you imagine? Picture that for a second. You meet somebody at a bar or a club, you're vibing, you go home with them, they take you back to their mansion, and then you walk into this space, this indoor pool area, and it looks like there's other people there, like you're not alone, but none of them are real. Just a bunch of fully dressed, freaky mannequins chilling everywhere. Ugh. Anyway, so it's like he was creating this illusion of normalcy, like he was trying to make the environment feel occupied or controlled, but instead it just made everything fucking creepy. So after the search, the police issue a warrant, but Baumeister had fled to Ontario, Canada, where he was found at the Pinery Provincial Park on Lake Huron, where he had killed himself on July 3rd of 1996. He had shot himself in the head with a .357 Magnum handgun. Now, he did leave a 3-page suicide note written on yellow notepaper. In it, he expressed regret about, quote unquote, messing up the park, and wrote about his broken marriage and then failing business. But he did not mention anything about the remains or any of his victims, and he did not confess to any crime. He also wrote that he had intended to kill himself somewhere else, but seeing his children there changed his mind. His final meal was a peanut butter sandwich. Now, for a brief moment in 1996, the case did draw major attention, but over time, the story remained incomplete because the identification process was slow and expensive and complicated by the condition of all those remains. But then, decades later, a new effort began. A major turning point came with renewed leadership in Hamilton County. So Hamilton County Coroner Jeff Jellison, who was elected in 2022, reopened the push to identify the thousands of fragments. He put it plainly that bringing the dead back home is what he was elected to do. However, things did remain overwhelming. Dr. Krista Latham, who was the director of University of Indianapolis Human Identification Center, described the scene as essentially a mass disaster situation. Now, this part pisses me off. Apparently, for years, the victims' families were responsible for paying the cost of the DNA test to identify their loved ones. But thank God, Coroner Jeff Jellison criticized this, as he should, saying that the families should not have to pay to prove their loved one was a victim. Good for him. He also states, quote, "It's my opinion that the attitude of those involved in the investigation in the 90s was, this is 8 gay men from Indianapolis, what do we care?" End quote. Now that says 8, but I'm assuming that's probably before more men were identified. And he's also not wrong, because the attitude towards the gay community back then, and let's be real even now, was absolute shit. But thankfully, they did continue to identify more remains. So as I stated previously, in October 2023, Alan Lee Livingston was identified. Livingston went missing on August 6, 1993. He was identified through the forensic genetic genealogy. January 2024, Manuel Resendez was identified. He was last seen on August 6, 1993, and was identified through a family DNA sample. And this renewed effort kept expanding. A report noted that a new search on December 4th of 2022 found one bone fragment and identified 20 additional locations where more may be buried. The case does still remain open, and the work remains ongoing, because thousands of fragments still need names. Now, one of the most painful parts of cases like this is the collateral damage, what a double life does to the people living in the house with this monster. And I think that's something that we also forget. I know I do sometimes. We forget that the loved ones of the people like Herb Baumeister and John Wayne Gacy and whoever else, they have children, they have wives, they have mothers who are innocent, who know nothing about this, and their lives are turned upside down. And I think that we tend to forget that they are also victims in a way as well. Julie later stated, quote, Our biggest question now is how he could have loved us and done this. Happiness as we knew it is never going to return. End quote. And another quote from her was describing the moment when police first contacted her. She states, quote, "The police came to me and said, 'We are investigating your husband in relation to homosexual homicide.' I remember saying to them, 'Can you tell me what homosexual homicide is?'" End quote. Now, whether or not people agree with Julie's perspective, those quotes do show how unprepared families can be to understand what's happening, especially when the person at the center of it had spent years appearing as normal, spent years just convincing people that they were this good person, good family man, good businessman, good friend, and it was all bullshit. So where does that leave us? Because Baumeister is dead. He never confessed, didn't leave any clues or confession in his suicide note. Investigators believe that the Fox Hollow farm holds evidence of more victims than were first identified. Now, there is still discussion about whether Baumeister could be connected to the I-70 Strangler murders, because remember, he was named a prime suspect in April of 1999, and the body stopped being found after he purchased the Fox Hollow farm. Still, the I-70 Strangler case remains officially unsolved. Thankfully, identifications are still happening decades later due to new DNA technology and new efforts. But that still brings us back to an important question. How do you tell a story like this without turning the killer into a headline? Like Hunter Vale said earlier, it didn't feel good. It felt like they were trying to turn Herb into the next Jeffrey Dahmer or the next John Wayne Gacy, just the next household name. He was the one that was getting all the attention. However, Dr. Krista Latham's mission was stated clearly. She says, quote, "We want to create an environment where the families see that our goal is to provide respect to their loved ones that was taken away from them." End quote. Shepard states, quote, "If someone comes in and tells this story to the world without the care and respect those guys deserve, it'll just break everyone's hearts." End quote. So what do we do here? Because I know exactly what they're talking about. We tend to remember the monsters' names and not the victims. And that includes me. We know these killers' names. They get all the attention. We know who Ted Bundy is. We know who John Wayne Gacy is. But what were their victims' names? What we have to do is remember the victims' names. We have to honor the missing. We have to tell the truth without glamorizing these evil-ass monsters. And in this specific case, these weren't just bones at Fox Hollow Farm or just bodies found along the I-70. These were people with names like Michael Sean Petrie, Maurice Allen Taylor, Delvoyd Lee Baker, Michael Andrew Riley, Eric Allen Roediger, Michael Allen Glenn, James Boyd Robbins Jr., Stephen Lynn Elliott, Clay Russell Boatman, Thomas Ray Clevenger, Otto Gary Becker, John Lee Bayer, Jeffrey Allen Jones, Richard Douglas Hamilton Jr., Alan Lee Livingston, Manuel Resendez, Daniel Thomas Halloran, Stephen Sperlin Hale, Alan Wayne Broussard, Roger Allen Goodlett, Michael Frederick Kieran, Jerry Williams Comer, and the two known survivors, Tony Harris and Mark Goodyear. And that, Granny's Gravediggers, is the story of the Fox Hollow murders. Now you know what time it is. Shovels fucking up. Let's debrief and discuss. Do we think he was the I-70 Strangler? I think it's very likely. The math is kind of mathin', you know? A side note, I hate mannequins. They creep me the fuck out. Even the ones in the department stores. I don't know why, but especially when it's like a setup where it's got like the adult and like the little kid mannequin, those creep me out even more. I don't know why. Jesus take the wheel. I cannot explain why. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. Am I the only one who gets creeped out by mannequins? It's like a thing with no face. Like it's just weird to me. I don't like it. But anyway, I also wanted to say that I find it absolutely fucking sickening how cases like this were handled and still are handled. No one cared, simply because these men and young boys were gay. Now, if I haven't said this before, I'll say it now. Let me be very clear. At this point, ignoring issues such as systemic racism or supporting the anti-LGBTQ+ isn't a difference of opinion. It's a choice to be a part of the fucking problem. Remaining silent does not make you neutral. Okay? Did you hear me? Did y'all in the back hear me? Let me say it again. I said remaining silent does not make you neutral. It makes you compliant and comfortable with inequality. Now, I stand with my Black communities. I stand with my LGBTQ plus communities. I support those fighting for answers and justice for our missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I support every fucking group who is out there still fighting for basic fairness, respect, and fucking justice. Now, I know all of my people feel the same way and understand what I just said, and that's why you're my people. But in the event that this podcast grows or blows up and a lot of other people start listening and they hear this and you don't like what I said or you disagree with what I just said, then this podcast is not for you, and that's okay. You can unfollow, you don't have to listen, hell, just fucking block me. Because as the aunties and the grannies and the unks used to say back in the day, you can hit the road, Jack, and baby don't let the door hit you with a good Lord split you, okay? Now again, blink twice if you understand what I just said to you. All right? All right. Great. Anyways, my rant is over. As always, thank you for the support. Thank you for listening. If you have any suggestions on a story for me to cover, please send it to me, DM me, IG, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. All the handles are the number 8, FTUNDERGS 85. Now, baby, tell me if you want to solve a crime with me. Examine a dead body with a chalked out line with me. Just kidding. Oh my God. Something is fucking wrong with me. Who gave me a microphone? What if I sang or rapped an entire episode to you? Good Lord. I would be blocked immediately. I would go from 2.5 listeners to -1,000, if that's even possible. I would never do that to you guys. Until next crime, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, an apple a day keeps the motherfucking murders away. Granny loves ya. Except for if you're a racist homophobe. Goodbye.